Hello and welcome. I'm here. This is Laura Brandenburg here today with Eno Eka, and we're going to talk about immigrating to a new country. And I am super excited to hear your story, as well as have a resource. We were chatting a bit about, we get questions about this at Bridging the Gap all the time, or people who are in this transition and maybe are part of our programs or considering what investments they need to make in their career to take the next step. And I've never really felt like I had a good answer. It's not something that I've been through personally or helped somebody through. And so I'm really excited to learn more about your story, as well as be able to share some really good strategies with others. So thank you for being here and welcome.
Thank you for having me, Laura. It's a pleasure to be here to, share my experience and sort of encourage people. And thank you for doing this for your audience as well, knowing that there's a lot of people who are immigrating, people who are also trying to make that transition. And, it's two tough things at the same time. Making that transition to BA is not easy, and then moving countries as well. So I'm happy to share my experience and help anyone who's experiencing this or who's about to start this journey as well.
Yeah. And well, I was going to actually ask two questions, but why don't we just start with a little bit about your journey, like what prompted you to immigrate, what was the process like, and what the piece were you a business analyst before, or did you make both transitions at once, like into business analysis and into a new country, which you're right, is like two big transitions altogether.
It's two big transitions. So I didn't start as a business analyst, and the truth is, like, hardly anyone, I find that, in their past life started as a business analyst. I started my career as an accountant. So I actually studied accounting. I have a bachelor's in accounting, and I was working in accounting, right? But when I got into this organization, I was working in the project management office and doing, typical project accounting and the spreadsheets. And then I got more into like project controlling, the finance part of things. And I kind of, found what the project managers did was, really interesting. And there was an opportunity for a spot, as to assist in the projects as a project assistant. So I started with project management, and then took a project management course and actually found that interesting. And after doing that for a while, I was speaking to a friend of mine. I'm like, I think I enjoy this, working in projects more than doing the typical, bookkeeping and finance stuff. And he's like, well, you actually really, should be a business analyst. Like, you have, the competence and this. I'm like, what's a business analyst? What's that? What do they do? And I go start researching and looking up, blogs and on YouTube and whatever, and trying to get more insight into what a business analyst does. And when I got it, I'm like, wow, so this is really what I do. And, these are the things that I do. And, leveraging the skills I already had, like my communication skills, interpersonal skills, my domain knowledge, I was like, okay, I think I'll be a better business analyst than project manager. And that's how I made that transition into business analysis, so taking courses, getting my certification, my CBAP certification, and, getting, opportunities that put me directly into, tech projects. So I just found myself, working on tech projects, software projects, and before you know it, I'd moved from accounting, into tech just like that, right? So, for anyone who's listening, you want to make that transition into business analysis, understand that nobody woke up one day and said, oh, I'm a business analyst, I want to be a business analyst. It just happens, so happens. But the truth is, whatever you studied, whatever you're doing right now, it's still part of the foundation, and it's going to help you in your career because you definitely have transferable skills. So that's really how it started for me. And then a few years after, I came to Canada. So I made that transition to business analysis first, and then I moved to Canada. And then it was a different terrain, right? Different country as an immigrant, learning the culture, learning about the way things are done, organizational processes, everything is different. So grasping all that knowledge, learning from people's experiences, getting people to mentor and coach me along the way. Those were two big transitions, but is it possible? Definitely. Yes, it is possible.
And what was that process? So I just want to affirm, like, when you say, oh, it's just like, you don't necessarily say I'm going to be a business analyst today. It just sort of
Right.
happens. Like I see this, like that was my experience too.
I
I
know.
started doing the role before I was in the role. And it's something when I first interviewed people for my book, How to Start a Business Analyst Career, like I thought that was just my experience and that I was
Yeah.
the weird one. And then it was like the story that I heard most often of how this career change happens,
It
which is
is the
why
general story.
we often advise people like just start doing some business analysis and kind of get that train going. And often all of a sudden those opportunities snowball.
That's true. So true.
Yeah. Now, but like in terms of moving to Canada, what was that? What was that process like?
Whew. Well, moving to Canada, I came to Canada through it's called the Federal Skill Program, Express Entry. So this program is for people who already have work experience. You already have higher education, at least a bachelor's or a diploma or a master's degree. You speak good English because you have to do an English test. They also rank you based on your age. So those were the criteria that you had to pass through. So get your educational certificate evaluated to be sure it meets the Canadian standards, and also take an English test. So once you do that, you apply, and then once you're selected, you now have to go on to do some other tests like doing a medical test, getting a police record to be sure you have no criminal records, ensuring you have enough funds to support yourself, because of course they don't want anybody who's going to come and be a liability to the government. So ensuring you have enough funds to support yourself, and then providing documentation to show you actually went to school and to show that you've been working for at least more than 3 years. So I had to go through that process of the applications. And once I got my visa, then it was time for me to move and to relocate. So you basically just have to book your ticket and arrive and plan your arrival. But the good thing was, and the smart thing I did was, before I arrived, I started researching, about business analyst roles in Canada, what employers were looking out for. And this is something I tell a lot of people, once you know you've gotten your visa or you're about to get your visa, start preparing ahead. There's really nothing like, getting everything you need. So I noticed the kind of certifications the employers were looking out for, the CBAP certification, which I already had, learning more about agility, agile and scrum, learning more about the tools that were being used. So basically looking at the job descriptions and seeing what employers were asking for, and then looking at the gaps and seeing how I could close those gaps. So I started taking online courses and improving myself, because I wanted to make sure that I was employable when I arrived Canada, because it's one thing to arrive and it's another thing to be employable, because sometimes what you've been doing in your home country may be a totally different process, right? And then joining associations. So joining the IIBA, the Calgary chapter, was valuable for me. So I tell people, look out for professional associations as well. Or if you're sort of, if you're sort of a domain subject matter expert, so you've worked in the domain for a while, there's definitely some professional associations you could join that could support you, go for your meetings, network with people, ask questions. If there are certifications you could take. I took a certificate course as well in financial services, just because I had some experience in financial services and I wanted to make sure that I just had everything to give me an edge. So doing all those things kind of helped to set me apart and kind of helped me get started early, in my journey. So in about 2 weeks of arriving, I got a job. And look, we're like, how did you do it? I'm like, well, I've just been preparing for so long and, networking with people. I'm basically putting in the work.
Before you actually moved.
Before,
so you were part of those chapters, part of those associations, networking,
exactly.
Talking to people before you moved.
Exactly. And then improving myself too, because I wanted to make sure that I was a good fit for the Canadian work environment, right? So understanding the culture, small talk is a big deal here, right? So you want to make sure you know how to do a lot of small talk. Even that wasn't a challenge for me, but really just learning more about the culture, understanding how my resume should be structured, the kind of things that, should be seen in my resume, because what we use like in Nigeria is the CV,
Mhm.
which is what is used in England, right? Because we're colonized by Britain anyway. So we kind of follow a lot of British, ways of doing things. So we use the CV, but what's used here is the resume. So understanding how to have the Canadian standard resume, using LinkedIn to network with people, taking advantage of associations here. There's a lot of networking events and just getting to know people in my local community and telling them, hey, I'm new to Canada, I'm a business analyst. These are the things I've done. If there's any, anything in your purview, I'm happy to chat about it. That kind of thing was, it was valuable for me in my early days, even though I still had my own struggles. Like when I arrived Canada, I lost my bags and I had to, yeah, I lost my bags on arrival to Canada. But because I sort of prepared my mind. I wasn't exactly scared for the future, like what's going to happen. Am I going to get a job? I knew that I would be fine because I'd arrived prepared, and I knew that I had everything that any employer would, and that's why I remember the interview that got my first job. I got an offer on the spot. So yeah, it's possible.
Yeah, there's so much there. Oh my goodness. I just going back to like you are in a new country. Like you lost your bags permanently, or did you ever get those?
I never got my bags back.
Oh my
Right?
goodness. Like everything you brought with you.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow. Yes.
Yeah, except for things I had in my hand luggage, but everything that I checked in, yeah,
Wow.
lost on my connecting flight into Canada. So yeah, I mean it was tough.
Yeah.
The early days were not the sweetest days. As a new immigrant, you have to get used to the community, getting lost, not knowing there's the trains and buses and how to make sure you're working with the times. Not having any family here and basically just walking through learning things myself and through the people that I've met here as well. I met amazing people who helped me as well, but it's really about a lot of mindset work. A lot of mindset work needs to be done. That's really
Yeah,
the
you
big
talked
thing.
about that. Like, so what were some of the important mindsets to have?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
So one thing that I tell people first of all is that know that you already have what it takes. You have the experience already. Whether you worked outside of North America, it doesn't matter, right? You already have experience. Leverage your experience, and it's really how you communicate your experience to your employer or your potential employer on your resume, your LinkedIn profile during your interview. Have the mindset that I have what it takes. I have I have the skills required for this job. I can provide value. So whenever you're speaking to people, speak from a place of value. And that's something I had to learn as well, that because in my first interview, I knew I didn't do so well in that interview. I could have really done better, but because interviews are done differently back home compared to here, here it's a lot of behavioral questions, getting to know more about your competencies, less than the technical skills that back home it was more about those technical skills, and you'd have to do like a lot of tests to actually prove yourself. But here it's really different. So knowing how to actually communicate the value was really, really key for me. So what I tell a lot of people is that you already have the experience. You just need to know how to communicate it and meet the employer where they're at and saying, I'm here, I can help you. This is what I've done in the past. These are my skills. These are my experiences. These are my accomplishments as well. And then educate them about where you come from and the projects you've worked on. Whenever I go into an interview, I always um, humor my interviewers and tell them about my challenges or my projects, the kind of projects I worked on. And they'll be like, wow, that's amazing. I'm like, yeah, you should come to Nigeria, right? This is how it's done here. It's different. And, educate them on your culture, educate them on the processes that you used back home. And I know that for like a lot of systems, right, it may be different, but the truth is at the end of the day, it still does the same thing. So even though you use a different financial system, right? So like I worked in the bank for a bit and our banking software was different. However, the banking software is still the same thing. It still does the same thing in the front end and the back end. So you should be able to explain to the employer, well, this is the banking system I worked on and I implemented. this is the front end and the back end. These are what it does. These are the modules. However, I'm very sure it is similar to what your banking system does. And then explain to them, meet them where they're at, right? And then, they see the value in you. So these are the things that I tell people. Don't think that, oh, I have 10 years of experience. I moved countries. Now I have to get an entry-level job. I don't think so. I don't think you have to do that. Look at the gaps, find how to close those gaps, and then communicate your value in a way where you meet the employers where they are.
Yeah. And I was going to ask if you made a lateral move when you came to Canada, yeah, or even a step up, right?
No, it was a lateral move. It was a lateral move at first, and then, of course, more opportunities, started coming my way. Yeah.
And I love what you said, because what you're really talking about there is believing in yourself, right? And even people that I help with career transitions that aren't going through the challenge of moving to a new country, that is still something that affects us a lot I think it's an analytical profession, is that analytical skill set can turn and become very critical and find all the reasons that you can't do that thing versus all the reasons you can. And it's just so critical.
Right. I know, we like to analyze everything and be like, oh, well, I can't do this role because they asked for this tool and I don't have the experience using this tool. Well, I'm like, well, you use this other tool. Tell me more about it. And they say what it does. And I'm like, it does the same thing. It's just called different names. So why don't you go in there and explain that to them and tell them, I've used this project management tool. This is what it does, right? And I know you use this here in your organization. And because I have experience doing this, I'm 100% sure that in no time, I'll know my way around it. I'll definitely play around with it and, and get used to it. So it's all about that belief. And that's why when I got the success that I did and, just growing rapidly in my career, a lot of people were reaching out to me saying, how are you able to do this? I really love to start a career in business analyst, or I was a business analyst back home, or I was a project manager back home. But when I arrived in Canada, I was told I had to, start from the bottom, go get an admin job, that kind of thing. I'm like, no, I don't think you should, because the experience is still valid. So I asked them questions. I'm like, okay, tell me about the projects you've worked on. And then when they tell me about the projects they've worked on, I'm saying, wow, you definitely have something to offer, right? You just need to actually put up your hands and step up to it. Use your LinkedIn profile, optimize it. Create a good resume and apply for those roles. Really, don't think that, oh, because I don't have experience working in Canada or in the US, then I can't get that job. Yeah. Right? So it's a lot about the belief and the mindset. And that's very key as to what I also teach people, because I find that's a lot of the work, is less about, learning how to write a business case and a BRD and create use cases. I mean, those things are what you will still need to do as a business analyst, but the belief in, I can actually do this, to make that transition, it really starts from the mind.
Yeah. And the other thing that the pattern I noticed just from you sharing your stories, you also made a lot of investments in yourself, in training, and time in terms of networking. This is not just a whimsical change.
No.
There must have been some real deep sense of why behind it too.
Oh, right? Yeah. I tell people, I say, you want to continuously improve yourself. You can't remain, the way you are. I'm not the way I was last year or 2 years ago, 5 years ago. You have to continuously improve yourself, especially if you want to become a business analyst, right? It's a very dynamic career path. You can't just say, oh, I took a business analyst course back in 2010. I'm good. You have to continually improve yourself. And that's what I did. I continuously invested in myself, and I still do, to learn more, to increase my value, because as you increase your value, you increase your earnings. As you see, Laura, with people who, take the business analysis courses and, they get a $20,000 salary increase, or, and it's amazing just because they increased their value by investing in themselves, by taking, the business analyst course. And really that's what it is. I invest in myself, taking courses, certifications, getting coaches to help me. And that's why I tell people, I say, when you're working with a coach, you're basically saying, here, I want you to invest yourself in me as well. I'm investing in you so you can invest in me, and you would always see the return on your investment for sure. I have seen lots of returns on my investment. I remember when I was going to get my CBAP certification, a lot of people told me, why do you want to go get the CBAP? Like, it's not a popular certification. It wasn't for a long time. What is this business analysis thing? It's expensive. Why don't you just go, you're an accountant, get your ACC and become a CPA or a CGA? That's a better career path for you. Everybody knows what a CPA does. You can get a job as an accountant or a financial analyst. I'm like, I don't want to do that. I want to be a business analyst. And then in Nigeria, I had to travel to Ghana, to another country, to write the CBAP exam, had to pay for courses, my flights, a lot of investment into getting my CBAP certification years ago. But till today and tomorrow, I'll still reap the benefits of being a CBAP. I'll still reap the benefits of, taking courses, having coaches to guide me in this career path. So investing in yourself is so key. If you're listening to this, there is nothing better than having someone to coach and guide you, because you won't make the same mistakes. You have someone to ask questions, get clarifications, so you don't make the same mistakes that they made. And then also, you're able to make the right decisions. From something I find a lot of people don't have is, sometimes a lot of people feel, oh, I can, self-study, get my certifications, or learn things on YouTube, or, or free courses, which is true. But there comes a time in your career that you need to make some strategic decisions. When you have an interview, you need to know how to negotiate your salary. You need to know how to communicate your value. Like, all those things are things that you learn from other people. And, with practice, you get better at that. Like, I was speaking to someone recently who was able to negotiate his salary, right, and get a higher offer, after the first offer the company gave him. And that's because I shared some tips with him. I'm saying, the fact that you have experience, you've gotten some certifications, leverage that, and, communicate your value to this organization and see if they give you an offer. He was scared at first because I'm like, oh, it's my first job. I'm like, negotiate, right? So having someone to guide you through this process is so key. And, when in my early days, people were like, oh, I want you to help me, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I'm really super busy. Like, I have a lot of work. Like, I will pay you to coach me. I'm like, wow, okay. I will listen to you now. But it's been amazing, helping people get their first jobs as business analysts, without any prior, Canadian experience or anything like that, but really leveraging the experience and the skills that they have. And the truth is, a lot of people have this. When people say, oh, I don't know if BA is for me, and then I tell them, okay, go to YouTube, watch these videos on YouTube, read these blogs, I send them your blogs, send them your videos, tell them, okay, buy this book on how to start a BA career, like stuff like that. And then they come back and say, wow, I've been doing this for so many years. I'm like, yes, you have. So why don't you consider starting a career and learning all the tools and techniques that you need, and learning how to actually practice business analysis, a day in the life of a BA, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's just one thread I want to tie together, and maybe this is a bit my experience. I'd be interested if it's yours too, but you talked about owning your worth, and then we talked about investing in yourself. And to me, they go hand in hand. And I've made some really significant investments in my professional life and my personal development. And I feel like I'm always a different person just on the other side of that transaction, right? Just when I was like, yep, run it on my credit card. Before I start receiving the value, right? Because it just changes you, because you're like, I'm worth it. I'm worth it. And it's a commitment too. And the reason you get the ROI is because when you make that investment, you're like committing to yourself that you're going to that next level.
Yeah. And even as people who have businesses, right? So, you have, Clear Spring Business Analysis is your business, right? I also have my business, but I find when I invest in myself as the leader of the business and as the principal owner of that business, the business in itself also gets to prosper. It gets to blossom and bloom because I'm working on myself too. I don't know how it happens, but I don't know if you've seen that as well. But as you invest in yourself too, and you're learning more, and that's something a lot of people don't know. They would see you and say, "Oh, Laura, oh, she's been doing business analysis for so long. She's great at this. She eats, sleeps, breathes business analysis." But there you are saying, you invest in yourself too because you want to become a better version of yourself every day. And it's clear and it shows in your business. It shows in how how you've grown as well. And that applies to everyone, right? So don't ever feel like, oh, like I've got this, right? I took a course years ago and I'm good. You need to continuously invest in yourself, improve yourself. There's a lot to learn when it comes to business analysis. Like there's so much, it's so broad. You can't say, oh, I'm the guru and I know all the perspectives and I can work as anything. No, that's not true. You want to make sure that you know where your strengths are and leverage your strengths. That's also something I tell people: leverage your strengths. If you have experience in a domain, you have experience in a technology or a software, whatever it is, leverage that and get into business analysis. I know that's one of the things you talk about in your blog post about how to start a career in business analysis with no experience. Talk about the fact that if you have domain experience already, leverage that and then start doing business analysis work in your role. So like I tell a lot of people, if you've learned how to write a business case and you're not a business analyst, try writing a business case for your project and send it to your manager. Try writing a BRD and send it to your manager. Say, hey, I'm learning some new things and I thought I'll just share with you some deliverables, some documents I'm creating. And, that also helps to build your confidence. And that also helps to give you that exposure you need in your organization.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. This might be I didn't prep this question for you, but it's like when we're talking about investments, because I get caught here as a business owner and like coming from Nigeria where the currency is so different, right? And then moving to Canada, like can you share, like, how did the financial aspect of being able to make the investments in where you were going?
Yeah.
Like, are you okay sharing kind of what, and like the mindset around that or the logistics around that? Like, how is that even possible?
Yeah, I know. So working in Nigeria, I was earning Naira, which is, way lower than the US dollars, where I had to pay for, the courses, for my certifications, my IIBA fees, a lot of that stuff. And I mean, it was a lot, but I was working. But the thing is, I'm very conscious about investments and investing in myself. I've always known that the best investment was in me than any other material thing, because as I invest in myself and in my knowledge, especially, it'll reflect in everything around me. So I'm actually very frugal when it comes to saving. I save and I have a budget. So this is something I tell a lot of people: have a budget, an annual budget that you set aside for personal development. Now, it doesn't have to be training or certification. It could even just be personal development for yourself, right? So maybe taking a course in a particular skill set, maybe communication skills or speaking skills, whatever it is, but have a budget that you set aside for, education, for your personal development. So that's something I was consciously doing. I was setting money aside every month from my salary for my goals. So I knew I needed like over maybe $1,000 to, get my certifications or take a course or whatever. I would set that goal and contribute towards that fund for my education, for my development. And even though I wasn't earning the best of salaries, I made sure that I was able to make that savings and invest in myself. Right. So, no matter how much you earn, a lot of people say, well, I don't earn so much. Well, no matter how much it is, just set a goal, have a budget, and put funds aside for, your personal development. There's nothing better than that. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't go on vacations or buy a nice car or all those things that you like, but the truth is, you have to, weigh things, and look at the scale and see, if I invest in myself, say $1,000 in myself today or $2,000 in myself today, and this investment in the next 6 months or 3 months would yield me another job where I get a $20,000 salary increase. What's the return on investment, right? From $2,000 to $20,000, right? So look at that and say, is it worth it? And if the answer is yes, then go for it. I don't second guess myself when it comes to personal development. I'm always like, take my card, right? That's really how I am when it comes to personal development. And even when I arrived Canada, I wasn't earning so much, but in my first year in Canada, I spent over about $15,000 in personal development. But that has, that has made me a better person. That has made me different, right? That has really set me apart from a lot of people and things that I do, as a consultant, as a business analyst, because I'm paying people to learn from them and also to be a better person as well. So no matter where you are, no matter how much little you earn, save for your personal development. Trust me, it will be worth it in the end. I can tell you.
And you kind of alluded to this, that you made this lateral move, but then there's been several
Oh,
jumps.
yeah.
So before we kind of let people know how to hear more about you, do you want to just kind of give us the snapshot view of what some of those jumps have been?
Oh, yeah, for sure. So, from accountant, to working in the project management office, and then business analyst, into working as a proxy, product owner, working as a proxy scrum master, learning about agility, and then working as a senior business analyst or a business analysis specialist, is where I've found myself now. Just making that move, and then working as a consultant and teaching business analysis as well are things that I found myself doing. Right. And sometimes I look back and I'm like, wow, is this really me? Because I still remember the early days when I look at the bar book and I'm like, what is this?
Yeah.
What are all the
experience when that came out, and that was still my reaction. Like, wait, this is what
I tell some people, I'm like, I wrote the older version. I'm like, the older version was not fun. Like, this version is way better than the older version. That was not fun. That was so technical. Like, sometimes I'm like, oh my God, what is this?
Well, that's awesome. If people want to work with you or just learn more about what you have to offer, where would they go to learn more?
So you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. Eno Eka is my name. My website is www.enoeka.com. You could also reach out to me on I have YouTube, but I'm not exactly, but you could search me on YouTube. I have some videos on YouTube, but I'm really more active on LinkedIn. I found that's a great space for me to interact with other professionals. LinkedIn is really my sweet spot. So search for me, Eno Eka, and then my website is www.enoeka.com. I'm passionate about business analysis. I love business analysis. I teach business analysis. I like to share my story and encourage other people to start their business analysis careers. So as you heard me share, I used to be an accountant, and now I work as a business analyst, and I've been working in the tech space. So trust me, you can do it too. And I've never written a line of code in my life before. I don't intend to ever write code. I don't like those black screens, but I love helping organizations. I love recommending solutions. I see myself as a problem solver. I'm a solution provider. That's how I see myself. And I teach people how to do the same using their experiences and their skills that are transferable to start a career in business analysis.
That's awesome. And I will say, I love being connected with you on LinkedIn, because you do share like inspirational posts, but they're also, and I do a lot of mindset work, but I often it's like, oh, right. Like that's just a lot of like good reframes and keeping everybody on track. So I really appreciate that about you.
Laura, in the early stages of my BA career, I don't know if you had this, but I struggled with like imposter syndrome, because there were people who, had computer science degrees. They'd been in the technical space for so long. There were so many jargons they used to speak. And I'm like, what is this? and I'll feel like, oh, I'm the youngest here. I'm the newbie here. How can I prove myself? I used to be scared to go into those meetings. It was a struggle for me, but I just used to tell myself, there's a reason why you're here. You can provide value, do your research, learn more about the technology, ask questions, and, and understand that you're still valuable, whatever you have to offer, and then leverage your strengths. So knowing what your strengths are. So I knew early in my career what my strengths were and how I could leverage those strengths. I really knew how to manage my stakeholders. I really knew how to communicate, and I was really great at my documentation. And I made sure that my powers, I leveraged those powers, and then working with the team members who were technical to help me, my documentation as well. And these are the things you learn, as you grow in your career. I know those feelings of fear when you see those job descriptions, when you get into those meetings. Trust me, you'll be fine.
I love that. Thank you so much. And if you want to learn more about me, you can find me at bridgingthegap.com. And if you want to learn more about Eno, you can find her at enoeka.com. And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. Bye.